Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. It's probably hard to imagine being more cynical about the news media than you already are. You watch the coverage, you know how totally dishonest it is. You read their tweets, you know how vindictive and unimpressive they are. If one of your kids went to work at CNN, would you even tell your neighbors? You might be tempted to say he was in prison. It's less embarrassing. So it's going to be hard to shock you with more stories about corruption in the news business, but prepare yourself. We've got a new one. Today, an independent journalist called Yashar Ali wrote an account of an experience he just had with NBC News managing director Daphna Linzer. Linzer is a former Washington Post reporter. She now oversees all political coverage for both NBC News and MSNBC. Ali did not expect to be talking to her. He just got on the phone with the Democratic National Committee. He had a scoop about the dates of the first primary debates. Not a big deal, but he wanted to make sure that his facts were right. The DNC confirmed his story, but then asked Ali to delay publishing it. They wanted time to notify their state parties about it first. Ali refused. He doesn't work for the DNC. He just wanted to break his story. That was it. And then he got an unexpected call from Daphna Linzer, again, who works at NBC News. Here's Ali's account of what happened next. Quote, she asked if I could hold the story, and I said I couldn't. She was agitated. Why not? I said I'm not going to lose a scoop. And then she got angrier and said, why not? It's not a big deal. Let them make a few phone calls. My jaw dropped. I realized that Daphna Linzer, the head of all political coverage for NBC News and MSNBC, was not calling to advocate for her network. She was calling to advocate the DNC's position. She wanted me to wait so they could call state party leaders. The head of the political division was trying to bully me at the behest of the DNC over a dumb scoop. Unquote. Pretty shocking. Now, before you dismiss it as hearsay, keep in mind that Yashar Ali is not a conservative, hardly. He once worked for Gavin Newsom. He was a fundraiser for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. He's not a right-winger. He's the opposite. He has no reason to lie about this. The head political executive at NBC News was doing errands for the DNC. She's a hack. This kind of behavior is par at NBC News. During the last campaign, the chairman of NBC, Andy Lack, leaked the Access Hollywood tape to the Washington Post. Why? Because he wanted to make sure Hillary Clinton won the presidency. Then he lied about it and crushed the career of Billy Bush because he was in the way. A year later, NBC tried to protect Hillary Clinton's close friend, Harvey Weinstein. They tried to kill a story about his sexual assaults, and then they lied about that, too. They got caught. Last fall, when the creepy porn lawyer was making wild gang rape allegations against Brett Kavanaugh during his confirmation hearings, NBC News knowingly sat on evidence that would have cleared Kavanaugh's name, but they didn't release it. If Chuck Schumer demanded the United States invade Belgium tomorrow, NBC News would dutifully produce a report about WMD stockpiles in Brussels. The Walloons are the real threat. Whatever it takes. Hours after Robert Mueller deflated the Russia hoax, Nancy Pelosi commanded the press corps to start covering health care. She said that out loud at a press conference. So CNN immediately scrapped its entire lineup. The next day, every show on CNN from 6 in the morning to midnight, every single one without any exception, repeated Democratic talking points about Obamacare. These are not journalists. These are faithful servants of the Democratic Party. It might be easier if they just admitted it. We all know it. Chris Plante hosts a radio program, The Chris Plante Show, one of the best things ever on radio, and he joins us tonight. We're happy he's here. How exactly would this the mechanics is a little bit confusing to me. How would the director of political coverage at NBC News know that Yashar Ali was working on this story?
Well, she got a call from the DNC, and someone at the DNC, when Yashar Ali called in and said, I've got this scoop and I'm going to rain on your fund for a couple of minutes, they said, well, who do we call to kill this story? And I'm sure they have a long list of people, a phone book of people in the news media, but they chose to call for this purpose Daphna Linzer, who, as you said, is the director of all political coverage for NBC and for MSNBC. And what did she do? Did she say, well, I can't do that. That would be unethical. She dutifully called, at the request of the DNC, a freelance reporter. This is a woman who has great power in the news media. If you're a freelance reporter, NBC and MSNBC are possible sources of revenue for you and for your wife and your children and for their college fund. And Yashar Ali, very much to his credit, took umbrage with her acquiescence to the DNC's call, and he sounded the alarm. Now, he's going to be hurt for this professionally, because Daphne Linzer does not appreciate, and NBC News does not appreciate, that Yashar Ali went public with this, because theoretically, at least, it's embarrassing to them. But the DNC knew. Who do we call? We want to spike this story. How do we put this on ice? Let's call Daphne. She can dangle a little bit of a thread over his head. He's a freelance guy. He can't alienate network people. She's a bigwig. She'll call and put him on ice. She called. Can you imagine doing such a thing?
Well, no, but that's actually the question I was about to ask you. So you're an out-of-the-closet conservative. You do multiple hours every day on your own views. You don't hide your views from anyone.
Right.
And I'm sure you vote Republican most of the time.
I do.
If the RNC called you tomorrow morning and said another reporter has a story that's inconvenient to us, will you help kill it? What would you say?
I would laugh in their faces. And it's funny, we were having a discussion about this morning. I do conservative political talk radio. And we were talking this morning in our morning meeting with Bill Hess and Victoria and Michael about how much higher my standards are as a journalist. I'm not even technically a journalist anymore, but my standards are so much higher. My ethics are so much higher than Daphne Linzer's, and then Joe Scarborough's, and then, shall I continue, Chuck Todd, and the list goes on, and Jim Sciutto, and so many others, that really journalism is dead. And it's, I was thinking about when I was driving over here, Tucker, and you know, I was a journalist for a long time. I worked for CNN for a long time.
We worked there together
for a period of time. I didn't leave journalism. Journalism left me, to paraphrase the great Ronald Reagan. Journalism is just on the ropes, and they're beyond that. They're dead. This thing is so bought and paid for at this point. Every day is a prize fight, and the referee is paid off. He's bought and paid for.
But at a certain point, if a channel gives itself over to the specific instructions of a political party, which I think CNN and NBC News both have.
Yes.
And MSNBC right now is running an infomercial right now as we speak for the Green New Deal. Okay.
Right.
Shouldn't they have to declare that as an in-kind contribution?
Well, I've been talking about that on my radio show also. President Trump brought this up in a tweet about 3 weekends ago, and the news media became apoplectic when he said maybe we should take a look at the FCC licenses of the networks. And my first thought was, well, that's not a great idea. And I thought about it for a day or so, and I said, you know, I've got to tell you, these are political organizations. They're not journalistic organizations, or at least the balance has shifted from being legitimate journalistic organizations that serve a very important function in our republic. You know, these are the guys that are supposed to be calling balls and strikes. And every day it's crooked. Every day. It's not the thumb on the scale; their elbow is on the scale.
No, it's totally corrupt. They're not even hiding.
And corrupt as there is. No, you know, Bernie Goldberg years ago, former CBS News correspondent, wrote a book called Bias. The book and the idea of bias in the media is a quaint notion of a bygone era. The word is corruption.
Right. No, that's exactly. And last thing, NBC leaked its own internal video, the Access Hollywood tape, to the Washington Post. Okay. Yeah. 2 old friends from Harvard, 2 separate news organizations leaked it. They've never faced any penalty for that. They've never had to explain how that happened. No one even mentions it anymore. Why?
They win awards for this. There's no punishment. There's punishment if you leak something that hurt the Democratic Party. There's going to be punishment for Yashar Ali.
No, you're right.
Because he told the truth. One of my favorite phrases of my own is that nothing gets you in trouble in Washington like the truth.
It's true. And for the record, I don't even like Yashar Ali. I never have.
Yeah,
we don't share the same politics. I'm not a fan.
Right. No.
But he's being honest, and he will be punished for it. And you're absolutely right.
I'll take the truth wherever it's coming from.
I will, too. I totally agree with that. Chris Plant.